Good morning. We'd like to welcome you to another edition of the Sunday School Review. This week's Sunday School lesson is entitled Ceaseless Love, and it's taken from Lamentations, the 3rd chapter, verses 16 through 24. The book of Lamentation was written by the prophet Jeremiah. And Jeremiah is responsible for the book that bears his name, that is Jeremiah. And he's also responsible for Lamentations. Now, Lamentations, or the word lament, which lamentation is taken from, lament means to weep or to cry. Now, and we're going to talk more about Lamentation as we get into our lesson. Okay, now the setting of this lesson here is Jerusalem. Now, here in the book of Lamentation, Jerusalem had been attacked and destroyed by the Babylonians and taken into captivity. Now we are talking about the kingdom of Judah, which is the southern kingdom. Now Jeremiah's prophecy reigned during the last 4 kings of Judah, the last 4 kings. So the book of Jeremiah was written obviously before Lamentation, but the book of Jeremiah was written before the destruction of Jerusalem. Before. Now, the book of Jeremiah deals with Jeremiah trying to get the people to turn back to God. So Jeremiah is pleading in Jeremiah, in the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah is pleading with the people, with Judah, trying to get them to turn away from sin and turn back to God. That's what the entire book of Jeremiah is dealing with. Now, the book of Lamentation, as I said, was written after the destruction of Jerusalem. Jeremiah was written before the destruction. Lamentations was written after the destruction, and they both were written by Jeremiah. Jeremiah is responsible for both Jeremiah and the Lamentation. And lamentation means to cry or to weep. And Jeremiah is known as the weeping prophet. And we're going to talk more about that as we go into our lesson as well. Now, there are 2 outlines in our lesson. Again, I think I mentioned that the lesson is from Lamentations, the 3rd chapter, verses 16 through 18 is where the lesson text is taken from today. The first outline is hope lost, and that is Lamentations 3:16 through 18. So verses 16 through 18 of the 3rd chapter is our first outline, hope lost. The second outline is verses 19 through 24, and it's entitled Hope Regained. Now, in the Lamentation, there are, what do we got? We got 5 chapters or 5 poems. Each chapter of Lamentations, which is 22 verses, except chapter 3. Chapter 3 is 66 verses. Now, each chapter 1, 2, 4, and 5 has 22 verses. Chapter 3 has 66 verses. And the 22 verses represents the each letter of the Hebrew alphabet, okay? But there are 5 chapters or 5 poems. This lesson today is the 3rd poem of the book of Lamentations. Okay, so let's start with our first set of scriptures, our first outline, hope lost. Now, this third chapter, when we get into the third chapter or the third poem in Lamentation, this is Jeremiah's personal pain. This is the pain that I feel personally. So each poem deals with a different subject. And chapter 3, poem 3, is the pain that I feel. This is my pain. This is my personal, how I feel personally. Okay, let's look at verse 1. And we're going to go into our lesson. Our lesson starts at 16. But let's read verse 1 of chapter 3, of poem 3. And this is my personal pain. That is Jeremiah's personal pain. He said, verse 1, I am a man that has seen affliction by the rod of his wrath. Now, the rod of his wrath is what Jeremiah said. The Lord used a pagan nation, that is Babylon, to punish or chastise his people. That's what he's talking about here. The Lord used the Babylonians, a pagan nation, to punish or chastise his people. And as I said, Jerusalem was destroyed, and well, first they were taken in captive, then they came back later and took more people, and then burned the temple down at Jerusalem. Okay, so Jeremiah saw all of that. As I said, Jeremiah prophecy, and Jeremiah was before the destruction. Lamentations is after destruction. So in other words, Jeremiah said, I seen it all. I seen it all. Okay, I seen it before the destruction, and I seen it after the destruction. Okay, that's what Jeremiah is talking about. Okay, and in chapter 3 is the pain that I felt. I'm a man, this is verse 1 again. I'm a man that has seen affliction by the rod of his wrath, that is Babylon. Okay, God promised Israel, if you are obedient, I will bless you. If you are disobedient, I will punish you. That's a promise. It's just like your parents may make you a promise. If you good and you clean your room, you do all those things, I'm going to take you out for ice cream. And that's a promise. But if they tell you, if you don't do those things, you're going to be punished. And that's a promise. Now, if you don't do those things and you don't get the promise, they didn't fulfill that promise. In other words, if your parents made you a promise, good or bad, and they upheld it, you knew they're going to hold to that promise. And that's where God is. God promised, if you're obedient, I will bless you. If you are disobedient, I will punish you. And this is what happened. Because, let's go on with the outline. We'll talk about a little bit later. Okay, verse 16. Let's look at verse 16 here, which is part of our lesson. He said, he had also broken my teeth with gravel stone. He had covered me with ashes. Verse 17. He has removed my soul far off from peace. I forgot prosperity. Verse 18. And I said, my strength and my hope is perished from the Lord. So that's outline is hope lost. So Jeremiah is feeling like all hope is lost. Okay, so Jeremiah is expressing his pain in verses 16 through 18. He's expressing his pain and suffering, and actually the pain and suffering of Judah. This is what he said. This is the pain that I feel. I'm suffering at, and I feel as like hope is lost. So that's why I outlined his title, Hope Lost. Okay, so Jeremiah is at the lowest point in his life. Okay, he's seen it all. Okay, And one point about Jeremiah being a weeping prophet is that Jeremiah prophesied, as I said, during the reign of 4 kings, that trying to convince Judah to turn from their sin and back to God. So he's possibly weak because I tried so hard to get them to turn, and they refused. I knew when he was prophet, he knew what was going to happen if they did not turn. So that was his burden. It's just like if you live in an area where hurricanes are frequent, and you have experienced the devastation of a whatever they call it, category 3, 4, whatever hurricane, and you see the devastation that it left, and they predicting another hurricane, and they tell the people to evacuate. Normally, that's what they do. They tell the governmental officials, say, evacuate. Some people don't heed the warning. And if you've been through that, and you see people, you know what's going to happen. You say, man, look, I've experienced a hurricane of that magnitude before. So your burden to try to, if the people don't cooperate, is heavy. And this is what Jeremiah felt when he was prophesying. I know what's going to happen if you don't turn. And that's why I'm the weeping prophet, because I know what's going to happen. I've seen this. I believe this is going to happen. So you better turn. And secondly, he tried so hard to get them to turn, and they did not. So as I said, that's several of the reasons why he's called the weeping prophet, because he knew the devastation that was going to come if they did not heed the warning, which we know they didn't. And Jerusalem was taken captive, and the temple was burned down. That's what has happened. This is where we in Jeremiah, as I said, the book of Jeremiah takes place after the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. Okay, let's go. That's the first outline. Hope lost. So Jeremiah was at the lowest point in his life. He felt like all hope is gone. Now, we go to the second outline, which is hope regained. That's verses 19 through 24. And let's look there. And verse 19 says, remembering mine affliction and my mercy, the wormwood, the gall, my soul has been still in remembrance and is humbled in me. This I recall to my mind, therefore I have hope. So what Jeremiah said, basically, when I reflect on God's love and mercy, and that's what could happen in our situation, we can feel that God has abandoned us. But we understand that God's love and mercy is unending. He will never leave us nor forsake us. And we have to remember that. We have to call that to our remembrance. God had not forsaken Israel, but he made a promise. He had to keep his promise. God couldn't say, well, if you're disobedient, you're going to be punished. And say, well, okay, yeah, I said that, but I didn't mean it. Well, what about you said you would be with me? Well, I didn't mean that either. So either he's a man of his word or he's not. And God, a man of his word. If he said, if you're disobedient, I will punish you. And if he said, if you're obedient, I will bless you, he's going to do just that. Okay, and that's what Jeremiah is reflecting on in the 19th verse, starting in the 19th verse. once I remember God's love and mercy, as he said, well, we get it's Acts 21. This I recall to my mind, therefore I have hope. Once I reflect on God's love and mercy, I have hope because I realize that God is a man of his word. God keeps his promises. Just like he promised to punish them that if they were disobedient, he also promised to bless them, restore them, and he will keep that promise also. Okay, let's read verse 22. It is of the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed. So it's God's love is steadfast. It's of God's mercy that we are not consumed because his compassion fail not. In other words, God love and mercy is unending, as verse 22. 23. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. God never fails. His mercy will never fail. And this is what Jeremiah is saying. Once I remember that, God's mercy is unending. God's love and mercy will never fail. Okay, verse 24, which is our last verse. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I will hope in him. So we have to patiently wait on the Lord because he never fails. But we just need to patiently wait on him. The first outline, verses 16 through 18, Jeremiah said, all hope is gone. In other words, we can't lose hope because God is obedient to his word. So in other words, as one individual say, keep hope alive. If you give up hope, that's it. So we have to keep hope alive. And this is what Jeremiah realized. Once he remembered the Lord's mercy and love is unended. It never fails. That's when he regained hope. And that's what we need to understand. God made a promise and he fulfilled the promise. Just like of a person, and that's what people like. That's what I like. If you promise, now some things you promise you can't fulfill it because of your frail. You may be frail. You can't do it, but at least you make an effort to uphold, as they say in a contract, uphold your end of the bargain. And that's what God will. God will never leave us. He will never forsake us. And that's what the subject is: ceaseless love. God's love and mercy never cease, never fail. That's our lesson today. We'd like to thank you for watching. We ask you to join us next week for another edition of the Sunday School Review. Thank you.